Hey guys, it's Quickie Baby and welcome to another quick tank review, this time of British tier 10 medium tank, the FV4202. Now what do you need to know about this tank in a nutshell? Basically it's the tank with the highest gun depression at tier 10. That's right, it has 1 degree higher than the M48 pattern at minus 10 degrees. It has reasonable frontal armor. It has some weak points. It's remarkably good at accelerating and having over 20 horsepower to ton ratio even when fully equipped. And its traverse speed is excellent, it's very maneuverable, but its top speed limit sucks. It has some of the best view range in the game at a base of 410 meters. And its 105mm is a very interesting gun. So if this sounds like the tank for you, stay tuned and let's find out some more details about the FV4202. So this tank has fairly standard hit points of 1950. It weighs, when fully equipped, just over 40 tons. And because it has an 810 brake horsepower engine, that means this thing is able to shift. It can accelerate. It can go its top speed limit even upslope. Now to mention its top speed limit, that's one of the downsides of this tank. Its top speed limit is 40 kilometers an hour. That means that this tank is completely left behind by the other tier 10 mediums. The Batchat will whiz past you, the T62A will whiz past you, and the M48 will overtake you at an annoying pace along the flat. However, one thing that you'll find is that the FV4202 will probably go faster than all of those tanks uphill, probably bar maybe the Batchat. However, it's not all bad news about the mobility of the FV4202 because its track traverse is an excellent 50 degrees a second. Now, its frontal hull armor is very well angled. This tank, when angled, is capable of pulling off a nice number of bounces off its upper plate. Its side armor is garbage, 51mm, and its back armor is worthless with 32mm of back armor. If you get the back of a FV4202, I fully recommend to be firing HE ammo into it. And remember that the back of the turret also only has 35mm of armor, but the side and the front of this turret is an excellent 196mm. Front of the turret is pretty well angled, but keep in mind that this tank basically lacks a gun mantlet. So if you fire at this very flat surface just under the gun, or even just around the gun, it's very likely to go in. And if he's angling his turret, then this surface becomes very flat as well, and it's very easy to penetrate. I would recommend shooting FV4202s in the turret when it's flat, and if you have a chance just to blast through its frontal armor, try and hit the lower plate, which as you can see is not very well angled. Now keep in mind that there is a commander's view hatch on top of this tank, a bit like the M48, but the M48 is really more of a machine gun turret. And so this is a large weak point that can be taken advantage of if you have the opportunity. So we know that this tank is fairly mobile, but with a low top speed limit. It's got pretty okay frontal armor, and its turret is fairly good. Now let's talk about one of the highlights of this tank, and that is the Royal Ordnance 105. So we can see here that this 105mm fires 6.45 rounds a minute, which is pretty low. However, it's not E50M low. What it does is lose quite a bit of rate of fire compared to the M48 pattern, as we can see here. However, we can see that this tank has got excellent accuracy of 0.32 and pretty good, well, very good aim time of 2.1 seconds. Here are all the 105mm guns compared for you on the tier 10 medium tanks. We can see that the British gun is the second most accurate, only slightly behind the German gun. The aim times on all of the guns apart from the Batchat are fairly similar at 2 to 2.1. And the penetration on all the guns is fairly similar, with the Batchat lagging behind a little at 259. So to focus on the rate of fire again, keep in mind that the Batchat is an auto-loader, but it does have overall less DPM than the E50M, which has less DPM, than the FV4202, which has less DPM than the M48, which again has less DPM than the T62A and its 100mm monster gun. So all in all, what should we take from the Royal Ordnance? We'll take that it's got basically as good aim time as the rest of the tank. It hasn't got as amazing rate of fire as the American and the Russian guns, which affects its DPM. So its DPM is somewhere in the middle, but it doesn't have the burst potential of the Batchat. However, now this is where the story gets a little interesting. Now this can be a bit of a double-edged sword. As we can see here, the E50M has the opportunity to fire heat, which has got 330mm of penetration, which is very useful for blasting through, for example, the turret on an E100, or even trying to engage a mouse frontally. The FV4202, in fact, doesn't get heat at all, it gets HESH. Now HESH stands for High Explosive Squashed Head. And what's interesting about the HESH ammo is that it doesn't do the standard 390 alpha damage. It in fact does 480. So it's slightly weaker than the alpha damage on the HE round of the 105s on the other tank. But what it does have is fantastic penetration. As we can see here, the HESH premium round. So to show you these HESH rounds in a little bit more detail, here we can see you can fire your regular AP rounds, which cost 1,200 a shell, your premium HESH rounds, which have got 210 millimeters of penetration on average, cost 5,200 a shell, very expensive. But you can fire what I call cheap HESH. Now these cheap HESH shells got 105 millimeters of penetration. They do the same damage as the premium HESH shells, but they're actually cheaper than your regular AP rounds. And significantly so. The rounds are 20% cheaper than your regular AP ammo, and if you penetrate with them, they do more damage. I will be showing you how the HESH rounds work in the gameplay, so don't worry, stay tuned. The loadout that I like to take is I like to take 6 cheap HESH, 10 expensive HESH, and 56 regular rounds. Basically, the HESH ammo allows you to have the same DPM or more than a T62A. If you're able to penetrate with your HESH rounds, you're able to do more DPM than a T62A is if they only penetrate with their AP rounds. And you're going to be able to do it a lot more reliably than, for example, if he was to try and out-trump you by firing his HE rounds to penetrate. Because looking at the HE penetration, for example, here on the 105 on the E50M, it's 60, whereas even with the cheap HESH rounds, you've still got 105 millimeters of penetration with the FV4202. Now, for those of you that do not have experience with HESH ammo, basically, if you fire at modules, it will absorb most of the damage. If you guys are ever engaging an FV215B 183, you know that's the new 183 millimeter cannon that's on the Tier 10 British tank destroyer. You'll know that if he's firing HESH at you, you want him to shoot you in the tracks. You do not want to give him your front. Basically, if HESH hits a flat surface, it's quite likely to go through if it outmatches your armor. And if it goes through, then you're going to be taking a huge amount of damage, and also you're probably quite likely to lose a few modules. HESH has a much lower chance to go through the side of your tank, especially if it hits tracks. Even the higher penetration guns with the HESH ammo, if they hit modules, then the modules will absorb a lot of the damage. So what you probably need to take from this is that if you've got an FV215B 183mm about to fire HESH at you, then you most likely want to give him your track. However, if he's not firing HESH, which I don't think any of them are, that would not be a good idea. So keep in mind that if you're engaging a tank such as the FV4202 or the Centurion 7-1, which uses the 105mm, if you give them a flat surface, which has got very weak armor, and they feel like destroying you, they will do it very quickly. They can load HESH rounds and put round after round into you and do a huge amount of damage. So guys, that is, in essence, what the FV4202 is. Let's take a look at how it goes in some gameplay after I quickly show you what I've been going on about with these HESH rounds. Okay guys, so what this replay, just to start off, I want to show you what the cheap HESH can do. 511. So remember, this is the cheap HESH that I'm talking about here. This stuff is cheaper than your AP ammo, and it does 480 damage on average. Penetration on it is 105 millimeters. 548. We've wrecked that AMX 1390. We almost two-hit him. We put the last one in. It's one of the quickest confirmed kills I think you could do. Now, just to quickly think about that, I spent less money shooting at that AMX 1390 than I would if I'd fired my AP shells. If I'd fired AP shells, on average, if we'd put 3 into him, we would have done 1,170 on average. So we probably 3.5 or 4 times out of 10 wouldn't have killed him with 3 shots and would need to have fired 4. However, with the HESH shells, the average damage that we will do if all 3 penetrate would be 1,440. For us to not kill the AMX 1390 with 3 penetrating HESH shells, we would basically have to win the lottery and roll min rolls each time. So sometimes you've got to use this into your calculations and really think about using the cheap HESH on the 105, using the expensive HESH in some situations, and using the APCR. So anyway, let's take a look at some more gameplay and keep a lookout for when I talk about HESH shells and AP shells. So here we go, we're playing the FV4202 on Himmelsdorf. I'm playing with Jingles and Ike. We've decided, because of the sheer amount of very dangerous tanks that could be going up onto the hill, the Tier 9 tank destroyers, Bosch 155, the IS-7, really, Tier 10 medium tanks don't do too well engaging those. So what we're consequently going to do, we're going to try and take the lower town. Now, as you can see, I'm at the FV4202's top speed limit of 40 kilometers an hour. Ike is playing in a heavy tanker, so is Jingles. So, speed for speed, I actually matched them quite well. We're going to try and shoot the VK turret here. Unfortunately, we ricochet, even though it looks like he's got the stock turret. It was a bit of a hard angle to hit him at. So Jingles is rushing ahead. Oh god, there's a T-57 heavy. Has got to help out that Jingles, try and get over this mound. Jingles takes a bit of a pasting. Ike takes one for Jingles. Now we know that this guy's going to be in a lot of trouble. We put one good shot into him. Really, looking back on this replay, I should have probably taken out the VK first, because I knew that that guy was reloading. Then again, the rate of fire on the T-57 Heavy is so good that really they can reload and then possibly give you even more grief. Now we realized that with the tactic that we employed, that we were basically going to lose the hill. Also, the fact that you can see that an E-75, an Object 704, two T-34s and a Lurve, all quite good tanks for taking the hill on Himmelsdorf encounter. Have also gone to cover the cap. And wow, okay, ouch, 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 ouch. We just took a very large hit from the T-30. I know he's reloading now. We managed to put a clutch shell into the T-32 and another clutch shell. Combining our rate of fire with Ike in his T-110, we can see they were brutalizing. That was a bad shot there. I didn't really need to track him. He had low health. I could have gone for the kill and I should have shot the side of his tank. So Ike managed to juke the T-30 fantastically there into shooting his track. And I'm going to try and get him to turn his turret. As you can see, our Tier 10 tanks have got no trouble going through that T-30. We drive by him, setting him on fire as well. And I'm like, oh, okay. There's an AFK there. Might as well shoot him once. And I know that they're going to finish him, so I don't bother. I move on. So right now we're thinking, okay, they've got a bunch of heavy tanks that are plowed over the hill. We've got to be a bit careful here. Some of them might have stayed back. Now, realistically, what have we killed so far? We killed the T-57 Heavy. We killed one VK4502, a T-32, and a T-30. But we lost quite a few tanks up on the hill. Thinking back on it, the fact that there were 3 of us really allowed to cut through all of those tanks very quickly. Could we have done the same with 2? I'm not so sure. But hey, we've got 5 kills, and we've got our health still. Look at the excellent gun depression here on the FV4202. Allows me great flexibility to try and poke shots at the Batchat. And here we can see one of the IS-7s has stayed behind, and oh, he's not going to stay behind for very long. It's time for me and Ike to do some work against him while Jingles catches up. We're able to put a clutch shot in his track, stopping him dead. Fortunately, we can't quite get the second shot off. But we can still see his beak, able to penetrate him. I take a look to see how Ike and Jingles are doing on health. I want to make sure that we all stay alive through this. Put another shot into his side of his tank. As you can see, the FV4202 is not bad at firing on the move. But he puts a big shot into us. Now I saw that Foch 155, but a quick look at the minimap shows that he is quite far away. We've got to help out our team here. We've got to try and use the opportunity that we have to try and get as many shots into the enemy as possible. You guys are seeing the kind of way that I like to play the FV4202. Himmelsdorf is probably not the best map for this tank, as it can't really use its excellent gun depression. What it can do is go around pasting things. Now, one thing that I think the FV4202 does very well is it works quite well with heavy tanks. You can see that we sort of go around about a reasonable kind of speed, even with our 40 kilometers an hour speed limit. Fortunately, we don't have a shot there on the Batchat. You see now that I have loaded premium HESH shells. And yeah, my premium HESH shell bounces. Okay, not even any splash there on the Foch, on the thick part of his armor. I've loaded another premium HESH shell. So you guys will now, in this review, get to see what these premium HESH shells are capable of. Okay, so we did 160 damage there, but that didn't even need to go in to kill that T-69. We know this Batchat is just chilling, and there's a Foch 155 aiming at us. Now this is a very interesting game because obviously the Foch 155 is very dangerous. The Bat Chat's very dangerous. Jingles is trying to get some distance to try and flank, and it looks like the Foch 155 just fired one. So we just fire one straight through the side of the Bat Chat there, wrecking him for 485 damage. The premium Hess shell must have just missed the track because generally if the Hess shells hit the track, then they don't go through. Here we go, we've got the arse, 414 roll. We're still going to fire more Hess shells at this guy. And 416. Now remember, the average damage on the Hess shells is 490, so you can roll ridiculously high. So now I load APCR again. I was gunning for the shot, and that cheeky Ike got in the way. I think right now what we're trying to do is trying to feed Ike the kill, or maybe not. I think we're saying, Ike, take brothers in arms. But right now, he's shooting at Jingles, so we're quite worried about Jingles dying. So fantastic. This IS-3 is lasting a little longer, but even though the shot didn't go where I aimed it, it still manages to go through. Now remember that this Royal Ordnance has got 268mm of penetration. That's simply fantastic. In 8.6 or 8.7, you guys may remember that they nerfed the penetration of the heavy tanks, which really reinforced that the medium tanks that didn't lose any penetration are really the kind of like the brawler snipers of World of Tanks. Fair enough, they might not have the same level of armor, and they might not have the same level of penetration as the tank destroyers. But what they do have is a fairly good mobility, as you're seeing here, and also the ability to really penetrate some targets more reliably than the heavy tanks can anymore. So I'm just going to speed up the game a little bit here so we can finish it off. Right now me and Ike are just thinking, okay, let's just secure this kill on this M103. I'd be a little bit careful because, you know, I don't want to die. But I'm going to side scrape just in case. We have his backside. I know I can take one more shot from him. So I simply just go out, aim my shot, and take him out. He fired a heat shell at us, and it ammo-racked us in the front of the tank. Let's take a look at some post-game stats. So here's that result in the FV4202 on Himmelsdorf. We can see that this was our Mastery Badge. We didn't need to get that much experience to get the Mastery Badge. Non-double, non-premium, it's 1,244 to get the Mastery Badge. And yeah, we did some work. Look at that huge tank list that we were able to put 1 or 2 shots into. We can see that we fired 24, hit 21, and of those 21, 19 penetrated, doing over 6,000 damage in our FV4202. Of the shots that hit us, 4 out of 5 penetrated, and our potential damage received was 2,200, and we finished the game with only 1 shot left in us. We damaged 11, we killed 6. Fantastic result in this tank. And look, we traveled 4 kilometers in that time. What this shows is that the FV4202 is basically a very mobile gun. It has great flexibility with the Royal Ordnance, and even on maps where you really don't need to use its excellent gun depression, you can still perform. I also like to show this because I feel that the FV4202 can work very well with heavy tanks. You can sort of play quite well with them together and synergize with them. Maybe the heavy tanks will try and weather some of the shots until they get low on health, and the FV4202 will weather some of the shots as well. But as it can't really run away from any tank specifically, except a really slow tank, it's really nice to play this tank in platoons. However, I'm not saying that this tank cannot be played solo, as this next replay is going to show you, and it will also showcase some of the gun depression in this tank. So here we go, we're playing Highway solo in our FV4202. The matchup's fairly even, it's a 53%er, so we're going to definitely have to have a positive role in this game. Now, the way I like to play Highway is to police the north first. Quite often, I don't like to attack across the A and B line, especially when I see that the enemies have got very dangerous tank destroyers ranging from the ISU-152 all the way up to a Jagdpanzer E-100. But what I feel is that in a tank such as this, with excellent gun depression, and great engagement, and I say great engagement because even though its top speed is not fantastic, its engine power really allows it to go forwards, backwards quickly, and really allows it to put some pressure up with its fantastic gun depression. So I'm quite happy to fight along ridge lines, and as you can see, these undulations in front of me, they're fantastic for what I call like fighting basically. So let's give it our best shot. Let's think about what we're going to engage. We're going to probably engage a T-71. We're probably going to engage just the T-71 at the start, and then the other tanks might catch up. But let's find out. Whoa, okay. How wrong was I? There's a WZ-11114 here. Wow, that's quite an aggressive location for a heavy tank, but that Tier 9 Chinese heavy tank is very fast. Still, we're going to try and work it. I realize that there's quite a skilled Tier 8 artillery on the enemy team, so I don't really want to stay stationary all that much. That was a bit of a bad shot. I think I fired it far too close to the hill, trying to hit his lower plate. And there we go, center of the lower plate. We put our third shot in, doing our first damage of the game. Now this gentleman's staying here. I think he's wanting to fight it out. He's angling his armor well, and he's covering most of his lower plate, but I really think that shot that we just fired really should have gone in. A little unlucky that didn't. Okay, so I just got spotted. I'm still worried about the artillery. So I'm going forwards, backwards, trying to juke. Trying to make the artillery miss. But I still want to get my damage out. So there we can see that even the excellent turret armor of the T-32 does have its weak points. Especially when you've got 268mm of penetration. Now what I'm doing is relocating fairly quickly here. Notice the top speed of the FV4202. It's very fast to accelerate. I'm trying to relocate to get spots on the mouse and to damage the mouse as well. I notice that the enemies are probably going to be pulling back. I do have fantastic view distance in this tank, or view range I should say. And there we go, we're able to put a big shot into the side of that mouse. He's still got his turret flush. Unfortunately, I think the shell there went slightly right, and also he began to angle his turret, and the mouse turret is notorious for being able to bounce even at minimal angles. So we're still aiming for the mouse. I decide to try and track him because maybe the eye can keep him still and the artillery can try and put some pressure up on him. So I'm aiming for his tracks again, and there we go, we actually managed to track him and do damage to him there. That was a great result. I'm going to keep the action up against him. Going to aim for the side of his tank. We were able to go in. So the T-30 has now revealed himself. I request fire on the T-30. We put a cheeky shot into him. Gotta love the accuracy of this 105mm. And we were able to already do 1,200 damage to that mouse. I decided to ignore the mouse and to finish off the Tier 9 Chinese heavy there. And this really is the perfect situation for the FV4202. Nice medium to long range engagements where the enemies can't really brutalize you or have quite a high chance of missing, and you get to use your fantastic 105, fantastic gun depression, put some brutality out on the enemies. Now, as I said earlier, this tank does have the best gun depression at Tier 10 of the medium tanks. It's got a whole degree better than the M48 as an example. So really, this is the master tank for fighting at ridge lines. One thing that you will know is that the FV4202, although it does have that weak point on top of its turret, just look at the shell velocity. I'll just interrupt myself for just a second there. Just look at that shell velocity. It's incredible. Really goes very quickly towards the target, which allows you to put snipes in, and quite often you will fire a shot and maybe one of your friends kills him before the shell reaches the target. That's not the case usually in the FV4202. Sometimes you can fire after somebody at long range and your shell will reach the target before they do. So as I was saying, the FV4202 does have the weak point on top of the tank, a bit like the M48, but in my opinion it's less pronounced. I really feel that the M48's turret is really tall above the gun, and that the MG port on the top is really a pronounced weak point. I feel that the FV4202 turret is maybe a little better for trying to use gun depression and duke it out on ridge lines. But this tank definitely does not have the mantlet that the M48 has. So we're playing at medium to long ranges here. We're just basically sniping. I'm very happy to be sniping right now. Even putting long range shots in there. I think that one dipped into his turret ring, or as he turned his armor. We're able to penetrate the I-7 at quite a dodgy angle. And there you go. There's accuracy for you. High penetration, the 105 at long range. Able to take out targets even like IS-7s, which are notoriously bouncy, fairly reliably. So So right now I'm going to traverse down this terrain as carefully as I can, make my way into the river. I want to get more shots off. This game is still close. I still need to have a really good impact in it to be able to win it. Fortunately, the attack run that we were able to help on the north has now reached the enemy base. And our IS-7 is engaging with an IS-8. Hopefully they'll be able to take out the enemy's artillery. So just another word on artillery against the FV4202. The armor's not fantastic. I picked up the clean kill there on the Carnarvon. Nice, easy kill on him. We get shot in the side and take the first damage of the game from the Centurion 1. And our artillery makes a bit of a meaty hit on the M103. I try and shoot him in the track. No damage though. I'm wondering if the Tiger 2 is in the way. I'm going to try and blind fire him. Here I load a premium Hess shell. No kill, that's expensive. I decide to load an APCR round again. And oh god, we left him on... Okay, 2 health. Oh god. So that really shows you guys that our Hess shell probably did hit him, but it just left him on very low health. It probably didn't penetrate and splashed on his tracks. Because as you saw, I did fire the Hess shell at the tracks. And really, you need to be firing Hess shells at flat surfaces without modules in front of them if you want to do any significant damage. So right now, this game's pretty much over. It's more or less just a cleanup. And I will just say something about the cleanup ability of the FV4202. I feel that the cleanup ability of the FV4202 is probably worse than the other tier 10 tanks because of its top speed. The fact that I can only drive around at 40 kilometers an hour really frustrates me sometimes. Fair enough, its performance is good in towns when you have to turn a lot and you have to go over undulations and mountainous terrain, but when it's simply a case of just going along the flat here, it's very frustrating to have the 40 kilometer an hour top speed limit. Because other tanks such as the Batchat, the E50M, or even the Patton, or even the T62A can get around a lot quicker than you and finish off targets before you're capable of. So we're just trying to finish off the enemy here. We fire one in third person at the 1948. And oh, the IS-8 makes the kill, confirms the kill. Let's find out where the Centurion is. And oh great, he's got his back to us. We're loading a Hess shell, just for a bit more testing. Fortunately, he's got low health, so you guys aren't really going to be able to see how much damage it did. But it did 397, so that was over our roll. Realistically, let's consider that last shot, just for a second. If I had fired a regular AP round, more times out of 10 than not, we would not have killed the target. At least slightly over 5 times out of 10, we would have rolled our average roll or less, and we would have not been able to kill the target with 397. However, by loading that Hess shell, I guess we secured the kill, in a way, with a much higher chance of being able to take the target. We turned a under 5 times out of 10 kill into probably about an 8 out of 10 kill with the Hess shell that we loaded. 8 or 9 times out of 10 with the distribution of damage. And is that worth it? I guess we kind of secured the top gun, so maybe it is. Let's take a look at some post-game stats. So here is that game in the FV4202. You can see we're able to get a lot of experience and a lot of credits. But don't be fooled because quite a lot of that was from the 3 times event. Just looking in more detail, we were able to do over 7,000 damage in that game. What an absolute result. And without premium, we were able to get over 1,400 experience in a tier 10, which is a big game. Reaching 2k in a tier 10 tank, you must have had a pretty damn good round. We hit 27 out of 28 shots, which is remarkable considering we did fire a couple blind. And of the 27 that hit the target, 21 penetrated. Of the hits that we received, only 1 penetrated, and we were able to finish that round on remarkably high health. The amount of experience that we got was definitely boosted by the fact that we did nearly 3,400 spotting damage. And like the Himmelsdorf game, you saw me all over the place. We drove nearly 3.5 kilometers. So really, over 7k damage, 3,400 spotting damage, a top gun, and damaging 11 tanks. That's an absolute result for the FV4202. What I showed here really is just how fantastic this gun is and the flexibility that you get from it from being able to use HESH rounds as well. As I showed earlier, you don't need to fire the expensive HESH rounds. You can use the cheap HESH rounds against certain tanks. You can get the back of an American tank. You can generally penetrate it with the cheap HESH. You can penetrate the scout tanks as well, as I showed you with the AMX 1390. Really, I think the FV4202 is a fantastic tank. I'm not saying it's an amazing tank. This won't match some people's playstyle. I definitely have an affinity with this tank because it for sure matches my playstyle. I like its fantastic aim time, its great shell velocity, its rate of fire could be slightly better, it's one of the downsides as I highlighted, but still the fact that you've got really good view range of 410 meters combined with that extra high penetration and the ability also to load HESH does make up for that rate of fire. The accuracy is superb, the engine power is great considering the weight of the tank. Top speed limit is the main downside. If this tank did have slightly better top speed limit, it would probably be my favorite tank in the game. For example, if this had a 50 km/h top speed limit, I'd be all over it. That would just allow this to really outplay and outmaneuver so many tanks. The thing is there's quite a few engagements that when you have the 40 km/h, you simply, for example, can't get back to base in time quite often. Or you can even get chased down by heavies downhill because they're actually able to go faster than you. But I still love the FV4202. It's the tier 10 medium tank that I'm playing the most of at the moment because for me it's probably the most enjoyable. I fully recommend it, but don't get it if you're wanting to have some kind of brawler medium that doesn't need to use its gun depression. If you want something that's just going to fight along the flat surfaces and just do a lot of DPM without having to strategically use its ammo or rely on, for example, its amazing gun depression or its excellent view range, you're probably best to get the T62A. Also, one thing to look out for in 8.8 is that there's going to be a new Russian tier 10 medium tank called the Object 140. Remember that tank has got 1 degree better gun depression than the T62A. And in playstyle, it's probably going to be remarkably similar to the FV4202, but it is going to have fantastic DPM for a tank with reasonable gun depression. I really look forward to trying out the Object 140, and it's really going to be a toss-up between the FV4202 and the Object 140 as to what's going to be my favorite tier 10 medium tank in the game. Anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed this review. If it's been helpful to you, please consider rating the video down below. I'd really appreciate it. I've got tons of FV4202 footage on my twitch.tv channel. You can even find live replay versions of these videos that you've seen here. As always guys, thanks for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.